costumes, the scenery, the makeup, the props, the audience that lifts you when you're down.
The headaches, the heartaches, the backaches, the flops, the sheriff who escorts you out of town.
The opening when your heart beats like a drum.
The closing when the final show is done.
The butcher, the baker, the grocer, the clerk are secretly unhappy men because
The butcher, the baker, the grocer, the clerk get paid for what they do, but no applause. They'd gladly give their dreary jobs goodbye for anything theatrical and why.
There's no business like show, business like no, business I know. You give word before the show is started that your favorite uncle died at dawn. Topple that your mom and boy parted, you're broken hearted, it's to go on. There's no people like show, people they smile and they are long. Even when the turkey doesn't know before, ladies hanging out in the cold. Still you wouldn't trade it for a sack of gold. Let's go on with the show.
It is 1968. The Vietnam War rages on, but there are urban riots, sit-ins, and political assassinations. But, shielded from the harsh realities of the world beyond, some teenagers brave the Central Valley heat this summer of '68 to explore the world of musical theater. In the years to come, they sing, they dance, they frolic to laughter and applause. They find their voices and find themselves. Those were the home movies, 8mm movies of Ken Stevens from Modesto Youth Theater 1971 to 75, lovingly edited by Robert Ulrich. And now, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dorothy Campbell Sturdivant.
I love musical theater, always have. I love performing, I love helping out backstage, and I love the magic that happens when I'm in the audience. As a member of this organization, I've had the opportunity to perform in shows, to stage manage, to choreograph, and to be on the board. But what I'd really like to tell you about is how this all began, because I was there 50 years ago. But the seed was planted in 1966 when Paul Tischer was a first-year teacher of drama at Modesto High School. He and Ginger Cola, the musical director, decided to do the musical My Fair Lady. We had a cast and crew of over 75 students. We had an orchestra. It was an amazing experience. And the reason is because of Paul Tischer and Ginger Cola. They were talented and inspiring. Well, my friend Ron Faria and I were lucky enough to have the leads in that show, so it was pretty special to us. After graduation, Ron and I would sometimes see Mr. Tischer, and we'd say, Mr. Tischer, you've got to do another show for those of us who've already graduated, because what are we going to do now? So, after almost 2 years of badgering him, he finally said, all right, I can't believe he said this. He said, you get me 44 signatures of people willing to be cast and crew of a show, and we'll do a show. 44. So we got him 44 signatures, and we did a show. This was in 1968, and the show was The Boyfriend. Now, there's one thing you need to know about this. He said, and he said it like this, with the pointed finger, if you know Mr. Tischer. He said, now, I'm only doing one show. As they say, the rest is history. Thank you.
Our first decade speaker, Talbot Smith, performed in 11 Modesto Youth Theater, Modesto Performing Arts shows between 1971 and 1980, as well as serving on the MPA Board of Directors. With the exception of a supporting role in La Cage aux Folles, his love of theater has strictly been as a spectator since he moved to Sacramento. Please welcome Talbot Smith.
Good afternoon. Before we start, I'd like to bring the house lights up just a little bit, and I would like anyone in the audience who has ever been part of a Modesto Youth Theater or Modesto Performing Arts production, whether you were on stage, backstage, in the pit, playing in the orchestra, working in the lobby, taking tickets, whatever, please stand up if you were ever in a MPA, MYT show. It's amazing. That's the impact that this organization has had on this city. Before we start our journey, I'd like to take a minute and talk about my personal feelings about Modesto Youth Theater and Modesto Performing Arts. I'd like to thank this organization and Paul Tischer for the significant and positive impact that they have had on my life. Besides my 10 years worth of great memories on stage, backstage, working in the lobby and watching shows while I lived here in Modesto, I have met a group of amazing people. I've stayed in touch with a lot of people that I knew back when I did shows here in Modesto, particularly since the advent of Facebook. But most importantly is I have a group of close and loving friends from my days in MPA. These are the people that I have been friends with for 30 to 40 years, and people that I consider to be part of my family, the part of my family that I got to choose. We have all been through lots of happy and wonderful times together, and also through some times of great loss and great sadness. But I cannot imagine myself without this group of friends. This is what the arts can bring into our lives, and why arts education and arts funding is so important to our community and to our country. So let's get started with the first 10 years. The Boyfriend was Modesto Youth Theater's first production. It tells of love and romance on the French Riviera in the 1920s. The show presented a great opportunity for all of these kids to learn dances like the Charleston, and it starred Miss Judy Wing, whose father was the music director. One of the best songs from the show was the romantic song, I Could Be Happy With You. Judy couldn't be here today, but she is still in touch, and she sent us a video of herself for this occasion.
Greetings, everyone, from Walnut Creek. The Boyfriend is a very special musical in my heart. It was the only musical that my father, Robert Wing, and I ever performed together. And here is I Could Be Happy With You.
In 1969, Modesto Youth Theater presented West Side Story, Leonard Bernstein's now classic musical, which pits the Sharks and the Jets, two New York City street gangs, against each other. It starred a 15-year-old Michael Johnson as Tony. To this day, Michael continues to perform with MPA, and that is what I consider to be a very long career.
Please welcome Michael Johnson, accompanied by Margaret Zabel, to sing Something's Coming from West Side Story.
Thank you very much. And actually, I was 14 at that time. I had just entered the foster care system and auditioned for the musical West Side Story. Now, I've danced and sung in the chorus of several of the shows, but I've also been fortunate enough to have had taken parts in some of the iconic roles, Captain Hook in Peter Pan, Harold Hill in The Music Man, Albert Peterson in Bye Bye Birdie. But they say you always remember your first role. And that was West Side Story. I appreciate the opportunity because it was the only performance my natural parents ever saw me do. When you stop and think 50 years, you're thinking about 1,400 stagehands, thousands of performers, 9 musical directors, and 1 founder director. When you stop and think about the impact that Mr. Tischer has had on the community and the opportunities he gave so many of us, we learned self-discipline. You know, we learned the craft, certainly, but we learned the responsibility that we had to an audience, and it was just a great time with friendships, of course, that have lasted a lifetime. I'm going to sing the song that I sang 49 years ago. Nothing like, I'll tell you, I'll never forget the feel of a full pit orchestra, you know, underneath that. But I'm going to sing Something's Coming from West Side Story. Could be, who knows? It's only just down the street, on the block, on the beach, under a tree. I got a feeling there's a miracle due, gonna come true, coming to me. With a click, with a shock, phone will jingle, door will knock, open the latch. Something's coming, don't know when, but it's soon. Catch the moon, one-handed catch. Around the corner, or whistling down the river. Come on, deliver to me. Will it be? Yes, it will. Maybe just by holding still, it'll be there. Come on, something, come on in. Don't be shy. Meet a guy, pull up a chair. The air is humming, and something great is coming. Who knows? It's coming to any day. I will know right away, maybe tonight.
"1970 brought a production of Oliver based on Charles Dickens' novel Oliver Twist. It tells the story of a homeless boy who becomes part of a gang of thieves led by their mentor, Fagin. In 1971, MYT expanded their offerings to 2 shows. The first was Cinderella, Rodgers and Hammerstein's musical version of the classic fairy tale. The musical was replete with all of the classical characters, including the horrible, spiteful stepsisters, the fairy godmother, and of course, Cinderella and her prince. Don Caldwell Peterson was Cinderella, and Lance Underwood was the prince. In late summer of 1971, I was 16 years old and was thrilled to join the cast of my first Modesto Youth Theater show, The Music Man. This show becomes one of MPA's most popular shows, and there are so many memorable songs and dances. The summer of '72 started with MYT's production of The Mikado, the Gilbert and Sullivan musical that was a satire on British society, but it was set in ancient Japan. Meet Nanki-Poo, Pooh-Bah, and the Lord High Executioner, among other colorful characters. One of the most colorful characters in that show was a gentleman named Greg Dean.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, comedian, actor, clown, teacher of comedians, and most importantly, the owner of that sneering face that was just on the screen, Mr. Greg Dean.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yes, that character was built on one of his lines. The line was, "I was born snitting." I had to keep this on for the entire show. Felt like Sylvester Stallone after a while, just very odd. I'm going to do something a little bit different. They've asked me, because I'm one of the old timers that go way back, I'm going to tell a story about Paul that nobody knows, because I think I was the only one that's around that saw this. People say teachers teach because they can't do. Will you tell me if this is true about Paul after I tell you the story? We were doing a children's play at Modesto High. We had just bussed in 1,200 children, and the show was about to start in an hour when Mr. Tischer got a call from the lead character's parent, who was playing the wizard, and said, he's not going to show up. Right. I panicked. Paul went, oh, give me a script. He tore a script up and proceeded to step into that role by taping different parts of the script every place around the stage. Every table. It was weird because you cannot steal that thing. He had it on the back of a slave. The sides, he taped it to his hand. It is time for us to go and count our money. And there was one piece of paper. He went over to the floor in a very specific spot and taped it on the ground. What's that about? Okay, in the second act, there is a chase when Aladdin finally gets the lamp, and the wizard chases him. And of course, we go up and down the aisles to this very specific cut of music. Go through the kids. The kids are screaming and yelling, having a great time. Well, the music was about to end from this chase scene, and Aladdin was already on stage. Paul was at the back of the whole place. He ran full blast. I mean, I've never seen, but he runs so fast. He ran down that aisle, dove over the orchestra pit, over the footlights, slid across the stage like some penguin on Arctic ice. He slid. Finally, he stopped at that piece of paper. Read it, popped up and said, "And you thought you were going to get away." Never have I seen anybody step into a role and no rehearsal. It was just amazing. So that's one of the great things about Paul. If I can take a moment. One of the things that people will talk about, the dancing and the singing and the acting, and it's marvelous. It was one of my favorite things to do. But nobody ever talks about the role that Paul played for troubled kids like me. The ones who had bad families, troubles at home, were troubled kids themselves. And Paul, with this theater, this whole company, gave us a place to go. Gave us direction. He was our mentor. He was sometimes a substitute father, sometimes a parole officer. You had to check in, had to do what you were told, had to do your duties, you had to show up in everything, you had to have integrity, you had to do your best, all those things, and we would show up. There were no gangs. Oh, cliques, a lot of cliques. No gangs, no drugs, no, we would show up night after night with a place to go. I mean, you have no idea how fabulous that is. He taught us so much more than dancing and singing. This man taught us a passion for whatever we wanted to do because he had that passion for theater. He had that passion for teaching and helping and being of service. He had that passion and he passed it on to me. In my professional career, I've been a Ringling Brothers clown, a street performer in San Francisco. I moved to Los Angeles, became a stand-up comedian. I'm paid regular at the Comedy Store. I became a professional actor for 10 years. I've been a film director. I've written a book. I've been teaching comedy in Hollywood for 40 years. And I wrote a book on comedy that's been translated into 4 languages. And when I began every single one of those things, I didn't know how to do them. That's what Paul taught me. I watched him read books and learn how to choreograph. Right when we were doing a dance, he'd read the books, do the steps, work on them, and teach them to us. We watched him learn how to be a choreographer. He got a book and taught himself how to read music. He taught himself to type. That's why he types like this. Watched it for hours. It was fascinating how he could do it. The point is here is that we could have gone wrong. All of us could have gone wrong. Could have ended up in jail, drugs, married. Okay, too early. But we had a place that was safe. Paul gave us his passion. He gave us a passion. He was the one that stood there and taught us, even become whatever you want to become. Become whatever you want. Become whatever you want to become, but do your best. And always be committed and always help other people. And for the tens of thousands of troubled kids like me that are out there, Paul, I would like to say with such gratitude, thank you with all my heart.
I think that's a definition of a hard act to follow. The second musical for 1972 was The Sound of Music, MPA's very popular and frequently revived musical with Maria, Captain von Trapp, and the 7 children all surviving a German assault. It featured Margaret Grimaldi as Maria and Dennis Roddy as the captain. In these photos, you might also see Debbie Myers-Loeb as 16 going on 17 Liesel, and Robert Ulrich as her 17 going on 18 love interest. 1973 brought The King and I. This was the first MPA production of The King and I, and it's a beautiful musical that's based on the story of Mrs. Anna Leonowens, hired by the King of Siam to be a tutor to all his dozens of children. She does, but to the dismay of the king, she also presents a challenge to their way of life. In this production, Mrs. Anna was played by Jenny Fraley, and the king was played by Oliver McMahon. Oklahoma. You can't get any more all-American than this melody-filled musical by Rodgers and Hammerstein. Curly and Laurie fall in love despite the best efforts of Judd, the ranch hand. The show was produced at Stanislaus State because the Modesto High School auditorium was getting a new lighting system and new sound. Auntie Mame in 1974. This is based on the musical Auntie Mame. The musical Mame tells the story of a single and eccentric Auntie Mame trying to educate her nephew Patrick in the ways of the world, or at least the ways of New York City. This production starred Melanie Wyatt as Mame, Lori Lotko as Vera, and featured Roger Freitas as young Patrick. At age 20, I played Mr. Babcock. I was already playing older men. The show opened during a heat wave in Modesto, and on at least one occasion, the temperature on stage was above 110 degrees. I remember looking at Melanie and yelling my lines at her, and her false eyelashes were melting off. In his review of the show, Leo Stetson of the Modesto Bee proclaimed, "Mame sizzles in more ways than one." That was the year that the effort began to raise funds to air condition the Modesto High School auditorium. South Pacific. There is nothing like a dame, or so say the Seabees in their South Pacific island during World War II. Romance ensues between the landowner Emile DeBeck and Ensign Nellie Forbush. Bloody Mary also encourages the young lovers, Lieutenant Cable and Leot, who just happens to be Mary's daughter, that she wants to marry off to some nice soldier. She encourages them with her song, Happy Talk.
Please welcome MPA's original Bloody Mary, Corinne McLaughlin Cyphers, and Happy Talk.
Hello, everybody. Hello. Talk about the moon floating in the sky, looking like a lily on a lake. Talk about the bird flying in the sky, making all the music he can make. Sing it! Happy talking, talking, happy talk. Talk about things you like to do. If you don't have a dream, how you gonna make a dream come true? If you don't talk happy and you never have a dream, how you gonna have a dream come true? Goodbye, everybody.
Leave It to Jane is a throwback to musicals of the early 20th century. This music tells the story of football, football players, and romance in the 1930s. None of us who were in this show had ever heard of it. I suppose many of you have not either, but we had a great time doing the show. Again, I played an older man. This 1975 production was staged at Stanislaus State, this time for the best reason possible. Modesto High School was getting air conditioning. That was followed by On the Town, Leonard Bernstein's musical about three sailors on leave in New York City, and the women that they meet and the trouble that they get themselves into. The show featured my friends Terry James, Robert Ulrich, and Brian Beltran. They were all trying to take full advantage of their 24 hours in New York. Even though I wasn't in this show, I saw every single performance. The next show was Irving Berlin's Annie Get Your Gun, based on the real-life story of sharpshooter Annie Oakley and Buffalo Bill's Wild West show. She also meets and falls in love with, handsome Frank Butler. The show featured MPA favorites Karen Lotko and Terry James. If you look carefully, you might also see Roy Stevens as Sitting Bull. 1976 was America's bicentennial year, so Paul got this idea that MPA should write its own show. So the Grand and Glorious Fourth was born to celebrate the bicentennial. Each scene, starting in 1776 and finishing in 1976, took place on the 4th of July, using songs from other musicals and famous songs and melodies of the period. Scenes included the Founding Fathers, the San Francisco earthquake, and a huge Ziegfeld Follies number. Once again, I played an older man. There was so much material in the show that the first run-through lasted for 4 hours. Obviously, some cuts had to be made, but Modesto Bee reviewer Leo Stetson called it the biggest, splashiest production you were ever likely to see. 1977 brought a revival of The Music Man, a reprise of the original production with all those great songs. This production featured Joe Hoover as Harold Hill and the 22-year-old me as Mayor Shin. Are you seeing a pattern of me playing older men? I actually did so through my last show, which was in 1980. The very last show of MPA's first decade was another revival, West Side Story. This is if you don't know the show, it's basically an update of the Romeo and Juliet story set in New York. Anita, Tony, and Doc try and prevent the inevitable tragic conclusion. Robert Ulrich starred as Tony with Allison Williams as Maria and Karen Lotko as the spicy Anita. So that ends the first 10 years of MPA shows. Thank you very much.
Decade 2 speaker, Amy Allen Cunningham, began her theater experience in Candy Chamberlain's MPAA Girls Chorus. It was there that she fell in love with singing and performing. Please welcome Amy Cunningham.
So Mr. Tischer gave me my first shot starring as Annie in Annie. It's a good thing I wasn't asked to sing The Sun Will Come Out Tomorrow, because it always makes me cry. I went on to perform in Big River and lastly Peter Pan 20 years ago. And after that summer, I went to Los Angeles to be a famous singer. However, my calling as a teacher was much stronger, thank goodness. So I followed in the footsteps of some incredible teachers that I grew up with in MPA. Karen Lotko, Candy Chamberlain, Craig Howard, Bob Rowe, Charlotte Ferreira, Mike Johnson, and a few more. My singing career did get me a husband and a couple of kids because I met him singing in a jazz club. But I'm so honored to be with all of you, all of these amazing people tonight. My brother, who co-starred in Jesus Christ Superstar. And now you will hear it a lot tonight, but it's so true. Life started here. We blossomed here. Thank you. Now, let's relive some memories and look at some pictures. Bye Bye Birdie. Bye Bye Birdie. It's the 1950s and rock and roll singer Conrad Birdie gets drafted into the Army, much to the dismay of Sweet Apple's teenagers. James Marsters, who you may know as television Spike, played as the lovesick teenager Hugo Peabody in love with Kim.
James Marsters also starred with MPA as Linus in You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown, and as Winnie the Pooh in House at Pooh Corner. And as you shall soon hear, at least one of these roles paved the way for his success in Hollywood and as Spike the Vampire. He had planned to be with us today for this event, but instead is in New York City shooting a pilot for a new series.
Hey guys, it's James Marsters. God, I wish I could be there with you. I'm sure you're having a lot of fun. Paul, Tischer, thank you for teaching me how to be on time and how to learn my lines and how much fun hard work is. And so this is for you. This is Linus from Your Good Man, Charlie Brown. It's a cozy sanctuary, but it's far from necessary, 'cause I'm just as self-reliant as before. As a simple demonstration of my independent station, I will go and leave my blanket on the floor. And let's see, I remember so much of the shows we did together. I can't do my dance number from Guys and Dolls because I never could do it even during the shows, and that's something you probably know too well. But I do remember...
I remember Pooh Bear from Winnie the Pooh. I've never forgotten how to do that voice. In fact, I've used that voice I've made a lot of money off that voice.
Paul, I love you, man. You really gave me more than I could ever say. You gave me my first shot on the big stage in front of a big audience and to be a small part of a show and multiple shows that were really rocking. And it was everything to me. I love you, man. You rock.
"1978, Showboat." Jerome Kern's musical about life on the Mississippi was written in 1926. Showboat is considered the first modern-day musical. It was also the first time MPA hired a professional singer to play a role in the show. Professional opera singer William de Valentine played the slave Joe, who sings Old Man River. Carousel, and June is busting out all over. And it's this Rodgers and Hammerstein musical about a carousel roustabout and a girl he falls in love with. And it gave us some words to live by with "You'll Never Walk Alone." Guys and Dolls is a high-energy production about the Salvation Army and its attempts to redeem a bunch of lousy gamblers with Luck Be a Lady Tonight and poor Adelaide, who just can't seem to get her man to commit.
Please welcome the sad, sad Adelaide from MPA's 1979 production of Guys and Dolls, Anita McCombs with Adelaide's Lament.
Nathan, are you out there somewhere? Ah, Nathan, can you believe it? 50 years later almost, and he still ain't put a ring on it. It's been said, the average unmarried female, basically insecure, due to some long frustration, may react with psychosomatic symptoms, difficult to endure, affecting the upper respiratory tract. In other words, just from waiting around for the plain little band of gold, a poison could develop a cold. You can spray it wherever you figure the streptococcus I like. You can give her a shot for whatever she's got, but it just won't wake. If she's tired of getting the fisheye from the hotel clerk, a poison could develop a cold. And furthermore, just from stalling the wedding trip, a poison could develop a law grip. When you get on the train for Niagara, you can hear church bells chime. The compartment is air-conditioned, and the mood's sublime. Then you get up at Saratoga for the 14th time. A poison could develop la grippe, la post-nasal drip, with the wheezing and the sneezing and the sinus that's really a pip. From a lack of community property and a feeling she's gotten too old. Oh, hey, you're kind of cute. You got a brother? A much, much older brother? A poison could develop a bad cold.
"1980s Oliver." This is the revival of the initial production of Oliver. Fagin is still reviewing the situation.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Jim Fay Alden.
has got a heart. Hasn't he? Joking apart, I mean, hasn't he? And though I'd be the first one to say that I wasn't a saint, I'm finding it hard to be really as black as they paint. I'm reviewing the situation. Can a fellow be a villain all his life? All the trials and tribulations. I better settle down and get myself a wife. Oh, a wife would cook and sew for me, and come for me, and go for me. And go for me, and nag at me, the finger she will wag at me, the money she will take from me, a misery she'll make of me. I think I better think it out again. So, where shall I go? Somebody? Who do I know? Nobody. All my dearest companions have always been villains and thieves. So in my time of life, I should start turning over the new leaves. I'm reviewing the situation. On the bedding, and the bedding I shall stay. You'll be seeing no transformation. Oh, though it's wrong to be a rogue in every way. I don't want nobody hurt for me, or made to do the dirt for me. This rotten life is not for me. It's getting far too hot for me. Don't want no one to rob for me. But who will find a job for me? I don't care what they've got for me, but who will change this plot for me? I think I better think it out again.
1980, Hello, Dolly is a story of Dolly Levi starring Paula Reddig. And for those of you... And for those of you that are following along, this is the last time that Talbot played an old man. Dolly invades Harmonia Gardens, much to the delight of her dancing waiters. The Sound of Music returns in a new production with a new Maria and a new Captain Von Trapp and 7 new children. Liesel falls in love with the German officer and sings 16 going on 17. And how can we forget this production? A young Heather Dooley, the amazing Stone family, like 4 of them, and Lou Woodward. And the South Pacific. It's an amazing production. It's a great one. How did we get there? Yes. Okay. What did I do wrong? Okay. And the gazebo is beautiful, and I love that story. I love that story. With the sailors. And what did I do? What happened? It's not my fault. This is the second production of South Pacific, where Lieutenant Joy and Liat find solace in each other's arms in the South Pacific during the war. How to succeed in business without really trying is the story of how a measly mail clerk in a major company selling wickets rises to become the CEO of a corporation. 1982, Man of La Mancha is the revival starring our community's pride and joy, Buck Townsend as Don Quixote, yes. And Grace Lieberman as Aldonza. Brigadoon, 1982, is the story of two Americans who accidentally stumble across the town of Brigadoon while hunting in the Scottish Highlands. Trouble is, its citizens appear only once every 100 years. What a stunning production. Shenandoah, 1983, is the story of a father and his five sons, and they try to survive the Civil War untouched. Buck Townsend starred as the father. And I have to say, when I was a young girl, all I wanted to do was sound like these three singers.
We are proud to present three wonderful performers from the 1983 production of Shenandoah: Annie Fraley, Frances Leah King, and Mocha Davis, accompanied by Darrel Lingenfelter in a medley of We Make a Beautiful Pair and Freedom.
Like Maine or Virginia, freedom ain't across some county line. Freedom is a flame that burns within ya. Freedom's in the state of mind. You can't get to freedom by riding on a train. The only way to freedom is right on through your brain. Whoa, 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 whoa. Freedom, 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 freedom. Freedom is a full-time occupation. Freedom's in the state of mind. Freedom's in the state of mind. Freedom's in the state of mind.
'83, Sound of Music again. Here we are. Don't cut my part, Mr. Tischer. I'm sorry. Again, starring beautiful Heather Dooley, my closest friend, made in MPA in this production, and all those beautiful children. And Lou Woodward. There he is. Well, and the finest of all the MPA productions, Annie, starring me. It's a hard not life, and all these girls are in this orphanage with the sinister Mrs. Hannigan, played by my angelic choir teacher, Candy Chamberlain. Then Annie meets Daddy Warbucks, and this production speaks to my heart, obviously, because of the lifelong friends made. The Most Happy Fella, 1984, based on the play They Knew What They Wanted. The story takes place in Napa Valley with Tony, an elderly owner of a winery who orders a mail-order bride. It starred Alan Gilbert as Tony, who was the understudy for the role on Broadway. Peter Pan, one of three fantastic productions shown here at MPA. Peter and Tinkerbell and the 3 darling children fly off to Neverland and meet the evil Captain Hook and his jolly pirates, not to mention a very hungry crocodile.
And now, Peter Pans across the decades. 3 Peter Pans, all 3 of whom grew up to become wonderful teachers and pass it on. Please welcome Denise Wind, Headland, Amy Allen Cunningham, and Randy Lene with I Got a Crow. That's
got a crow. I'm just the cleverest fella 'twas ever my fortune to know. I got a crow.
I got a crow. I give the sun and the sunlight will shine and the forest will glow. I got a crow.
I got a crow. I can climb trees and play tag with the breeze in the meadows below. I got a crow. If I were a very ordinary, everyday thing, I'd never be heard. Cock-a-doodling round like a bird, so naturally. When we discover the cleverness of a remarkable 3, how can we hide it when deep down inside it just tickles us so that we've gotta let go and
one of the fantastic performers who really wanted to be with us today is Trisha Palucho. Trisha has gone on to star on Broadway, in films, and on television. She sent this message to share with all of us, plus a little request for Mr. Tischer.
Hi, Mr. Tischer. This is Trisha Paluccio. I just want to thank you for the wonderful memories I have of our summers together at MPA and for everything that you taught me. There's one lesson that I still think of today. I was auditioning for the role of Wendy in Peter Pan. I was certain I was going to get it because I just played the role of Annie in the Bay Area and I'd been practicing with the record all year long, and I thought this was going to be the next rung on my ladder to stardom. We went to the audition, my whole family came along, which is just what we did back then, and I had the great idea of asking my older cousin Michelle if she would audition for the role of the maid, because I thought it would be so much fun if we could do it together. So we stood on the stage, we all sang our songs, and all of a sudden, you got on the God mic and you said, "Michelle, would you come down here for a moment?" She looked at me and shrugged and went down to see you, and I thought, that's weird. Is she gonna understudy or what? I didn't know. Came back up and she said, "He wants me to audition for the role of Wendy." The next week, we drove to the high school, the most important day of my year, and I walked up those stairs to look at the cast list, and there it was in black and white. Michelle had been cast in the role of Wendy. My brother was a lost boy with lines, and I was cast as an Indian. Ugglebug, 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 wah. That was it. Mr. Tischer, I just want to thank you for introducing me to a true life in the theater. Since then, I have gone on to lose roles on Broadway, off Broadway, in television and film. You name it, I lost it. I just don't think I could have a career in the theater without learning the wonderful lesson that you taught me. Please think of reviving Peter Pan. It's not too late for me to play the role of Wendy, is it? Peter, you won't forget me, will you?
"1985, My Fair Lady, Lerner and Lowe's show about Eliza Doolittle and Henry Higgins, who tries to teach her proper English and to be a lady. And we love to remember the line, "The rain in Spain stays mainly on the plain." Good. I think you've got it. Good. Fiddler on the Roof, 1985. Tevye and his wife Goldie try to keep tradition, but his daughters have different ideas. A Chorus Line is based on the life of real dancers in New York, and the musical examines the exhalations and heartbreaks of a career in theater. Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat is based on the biblical story of Joseph, who was sold into slavery by his brothers, only to be later redeemed. Madeline Roddy stunned as the narrator, and Greg Pyatt was awesome as the Pharaoh, of course. On the Town, the Leonard Bernstein musical is revived here to celebrate MPA's 20th anniversary, returning with its 3 original sailors.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the podium Melanie Wyatt.
Oh, I made it. Good. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Generations of friends are reunited here today, here on this stage and in this audience. We are joyful in the reunion, but wistful too, because our shared memories include many friends who have passed on, friends with whom we danced and sang and laughed, friends taken far too soon from us. Far too many faces and names to list, but not too many friends to remember and hold in our hearts as we continue to do. Today, we share with you one of their voices. One voice singing for all the voices that are now silent.
Decade 3 speaker Bob Rowe began his relationship with Modesto Youth Theater in 1970, working backstage for the first production of Oliver. He resides in Sacramento, where he is an Ellie award-winning actor in community theater.
All right, you can applaud. Oh, shoot. Thank you, thank you. I'm so pleased to be here to celebrate Modesto Performing Arts' 50th anniversary. My time in what we then called Modesto Youth Theater, MYT, was mostly in the early 70s, thank you, dear, 1970 to 1975. And more than the remarkable shows that were produced over the last 50 years, it's important to remember and to say again what Talbot and Amy have already expressed, the wonderful friendships that began here and the families that were formed as a result of being a part of this organization. The circle of friends I have today are the same ones I have had for the last 40 years, and I met them doing summer shows. I'm a little touched by that rendition of my friend Paula. It's just really overwhelming. So I'm gonna take a moment. All right. All of us attended various high schools, but every summer we reunited and rekindled our friendships from 6 to 11 p.m. in that hot box known as the Modesto High School auditorium before it was air conditioned. I'll never forget as a dancer in 1974's production of Mame, having to peel off our costumes for a quick costume change. Talbot Smith, Craig Howard, Mocha Davis, Eric Marlin, Annie Fraley, Francis King, Greg Elson, Brian Beltran, Margie Rose, Aaron Parker, Jim Fay, Stephanie Schuber, Holly Butler, Charlotte and Barbara Ann Ferreira, Melanie Ann Wyatt, Karen Lotko, and the late, great Paula Reddig. All of us owe a debt of gratitude to Paul Tischer for making our friendship possible. We've been meeting for over 20 years, each the second weekend in July, canoeing down the muddy Russian River, or at Christmas in our gift exchange, where we talk about old times and recreate the sense of fellowship we all had doing those summer shows back then. And sometimes we even put on a show. And now, on with the show. The third decade begins with O-K-L-A-H-O-M-A. MPA revives Rodgers and Hammerstein's Treasure with hit songs Surrey with the Fringe on Top, People Will Say We're in Love, I Can't Say No, Everything's Up to Date in Kansas City, along with the previously mentioned title song. This production starred the velvet-voiced Ron Faria and Helen Axelson Roddy, with regulars Phil Fincher and Grace Lieberman. Also in 1988, 42nd Street, a huge tap dancing show about love and romance on New York's Broadway. Who can forget Betty Bilson's amazing dance stamina?
It's no wonder that the MPA production of 42nd Street won the titles of Best Musical, Best Choreography, and Best Supporting Actress in the 2005 SARTA Awards. This toe-tapping show has been a hit with audiences through 3 different decades, and tonight, Debbie Holtzclaw has gathered dancers from those 3 decades, and here they are to shine once again. Get out your tap shoes, Francis. MPA is doing a show.
Don't let it be forgot that once there was a spot that was known as Camelot. In 1989, the Knights of the Round Table meet again in this beautiful production of romance and battle, starring Guinevere, Sir Lancelot, and of course, King Arthur himself.
Please welcome Gregory Pyatt, MPA's Sir Lancelot, with If Ever I Would Leave You.
If ever I would leave you, it would be in summer. Seeing you in summer, I never would go. Your hair streaked with sunlight, your lips so red as flame, your face with a luster that puts gold to shame. But if I'd ever leave you, it wouldn't be in autumn. How I'd leave in autumn, I never would know. I've seen how you sparkle when fall nips the air. I know you in autumn, and I must be there. And could I leave you running merrily through the snow, or on a wintry evening when you catch the fire's glow? If ever I would leave you, how could it be in springtime, knowing how in spring I'm bewitched by you so? Oh no, not in springtime, summer, winter, or fall. No, never could I leave you at all.
The second show in the summer of 1989 was the third production of one of my favorites, Oliver. In this production, Charlotte Ferreira reprised her role of Mrs. Bumble, having played the same part in the 1970 production. Our third Oliver, Jeff Mianza, is now Associate Director of Guthrie Theater in Minneapolis, St. Paul, one of the leading theater companies in the country. Now, I know this isn't all about me, but I did return to MPA after almost 20 years for the summer of 1990 and played Mr. Goldstone in this production of Gypsy, along with Melanie Ann Wyatt and Richard Wagner. Gypsy is the story of a striptease artist, Gypsy Rose Lee, and her overbearing mother. Everything's coming up roses.
One of the great stars from the history of Modesto Performing Arts and one of the most beautiful people any of us have ever known. Here now to reprise Some People from Gypsy, Melanie Wyatt.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Goldstone. We'll have egg rolls later. Some people can get a thrill knitting sweaters and sitting still. That's okay for some people who don't know they're alive. Some people can thrive and bloom, living life of all the sights that I gotta see at, all the places I gotta play, all the things that I gotta be at. Come on, Papa, what do you say? Some people sit on their butts, got the dream, yeah, but not the guts. That's living for some people, for some humdrum people, I suppose. Well, they can sit and rot, but not a rose.
20 years after MPA's initial production, MPA brings back West Side Story with new sets and costumes. And look, there I am again, playing Mr. Gladhand in this production of West Side Story.
When music, good lyrics, and dance come together, expect a musical. When the vocalist is Denise Wend Headland and the dancers are the fantastic Nicole Firpo and Grant Landon from Central West Ballet, expect something magical. The next number is a love note from our choreographer, Debbie Holtzclaw, who says, musical theater is our somewhere, a place that can lift and inspire. She sends out a big thank you to Mr. Paul Tischer and MPA for such a wonderful gift. Now, from West Side Story, Somewhere.
There's a place for us, somewhere a place for us. Time together with time to spare, time to learn, time to care. Someday, somewhere, we'll find a new way of living. We'll find a way of forgiving somewhere. There's a place for us, a time and place for us. Hold my hand and we're halfway there. Hold my hand and I'll take you there. Somehow, someday, somewhere.
"1991 brought the lively production of Seven Brides for Seven Brothers, based on the movie of the same name that starred Howard Keel and Jane Powell. The story takes place in rural Oregon, where seven brothers decide that the only way they're going to get married is to kidnap seven girls. The girls are not happy, initially. Also, in 1991, those kiddos of the River City Marching Band are up to it again in the third production of Meredith Willson's The Music Man. In this production, we find wee Charlie Talcott in the role of Winthrop, and Michael Johnson, who had played the original Tony, back in the original 1969 production of West Side Story, returns to MPA as Professor Harold Hill. 1992, Big River, based on Mark Twain's classic American novel, Huckleberry Finn. How about a hand for those hogs? The second show that same summer, A Chorus Line. Once again, chorus hopefuls try for a place in a Broadway show as they explain why with the song, What I Did for Love.
Ladies and gentlemen, the MPA Ensemble Chorus, led by music director Candy Chamberlain and soloist Melissa Reiner-Smith with What I Did for Love.
Kiss today, goodbye. The sweetness and the sorrow. Wish me luck the same to you. But I can't regret what I did for love. What I did for love. Gone, love is never gone. As we travel on, love's what we'll remember. Tomorrow, we did what we had to do. Won't forget, can't regret what I did for love. What I did for
Nice job. 1993 brought us Fiddler on the Roof. Yes, that's Noble Dinsey and our darling Grace Lieberman, reviving their roles as Tevye and Golda from the 1986 production of the same name, to life. The third production of The Sound of Music continues to prove to be one of the most successful of all MPA's shows. The only Broadway musical where you can learn the musical scale starting with Do, Re, Mi. This production starred Don Peterson. In 1994, The King and I is revived 20 years after the initial MPA production with Madeline Roddy in the role of Mrs. Anna. New sets and costumes, but regrettably, the original children from the 1973 production outgrew their roles. Fortunately, new children stepped in. The second show for 1994 is Guys and Dolls. The dice continues to roll once again in the sewers of New York as Nathan Detroit, played by the irrepressible Phil Fincher, and his fellow gang members try once again not to rock the boat.
The ensemble chorus returns, this time with Phil Fincher as soloist to perform Sit Down, You're Rocking the Boat.
I dreamed last night I got on the boat to heaven, and by some chance I had brought my dice along, and there I stood and I hollered someone fade me, but the passengers, they knew right from wrong. And the people all said, sit down, you're rocking the boat. People all said, sit down, you're rocking the boat. And the devil will drag you under by the sharp lapel of your checkered coat. Sit down, sit down, sit down, sit down, sit down, you're rocking the boat. I sailed away on that little boat to heaven, and by some chance found a bottle in my fist, and there I stood, nicely passing out the whiskey, but the passengers were bound to resist. And the people all said, beware, you're on a heavenly trip. People all said, beware, beware, you scuttle the ship. And the devil will drag you under by the fancy tie round your wicked throat. Sit down, sit down, sit down, sit down, sit down, you're rocking the boat. And as I laughed at those passengers to heaven, a great big wave came and washed me overboard. And as I sank and I hollered, someone save me, that's the moment I woke up, thank the Lord. And I said to myself, sit down, you're rocking the boat. Said to myself, sit down, you're rocking the boat. And the devil will drag you under with a soul so heavy you'll never float. Sit down, sit down, sit down, sit down, sit down, you're rocking the boat. Sit down, you're rocking, sit down, sit down, sit down, you're rocking the boat. Sit down, you're rocking, sit down, sit down, sit down, you're rocking the boat. Sit down, the boat.
Let's hear it again for Candy Chamberlain and her chorus. It's okay. That's okay. 1995 brings Jesus Christ Superstar to the MPA stage for the first time. Sir Andrew Lloyd Webber takes the biblical story of Jesus Christ, beautifully played by Craig Howard, through his trials and crucifixion, and creates one of the most emotional musicals in Broadway history. On a lighter note, the second show of 1995 is Peter Pan. Peter, this time played by Amy Allen, and the children fly once again to Neverland into the hands, or hook, of Captain Hook. However, the crocodile also has his eyes and jaws on Captain Hook. Children seem to love this show. I did not mean a thing by that. That's my version of sincerity. 1996, the first show was Nonsense. Never has a nunnery had so much fun as our 5 nuns go through the trial and tribulations of running a nunnery. Of course, Sister Amnesia can't remember any of it. The next show is the 3rd production of South Pacific, this time starring Roy Stevens as the French plantation owner Emile Debec and Laura Storm as Nellie Forbush. One of the most beautiful songs Rodgers and Hammerstein's ever wrote for the Broadway musical is the song that Emile sings when he feels he's lost the very thing he realized that matters most to him. The song, This Nearly Was Mine. Ladies and gentlemen, the international opera star, Roy Stevens.
I'm going to say something first.
As well you should.
Yeah, as I always do. Sorry about that. In 1970, my 4 older sisters, persuaded me to audition for Oliver, but I wasn't cute enough. Dave Schuber was, and he got the role, as you saw earlier. The next year, I auditioned for the last spot in the male dancers, but Terry James could almost do a cartwheel, and I couldn't quite. Later on, Robert Ulrich was a much better Tony than I was, even though I thought I should have gotten the role. I never told you that, Robert. I had the opportunity through Modesto Youth Theater and Modesto Performing Arts to learn to be on stage, to get comfortable with myself and as a performer. But I never got a leading role, Paul. I did get some nice secondary roles, and after I'd done 16 shows, Mr. Tischer and Mr. Clark, I think maybe yes, indeed. Mr. Clark, I think maybe to get rid of me or something, I don't know, they gave me a scholarship at the end of the summer of $50.
Yeah.
Not just that, it had restrictions. I could only use it for fine arts lessons. I was all science math at that time. I enjoyed singing, I enjoyed performing, but that was for those other kinds of people. I had no interest in being a performer at all, nor did I have, apparently, the kind of talent that warranted such interest, especially according to my father and even my mother. But with those $50, which I had to use because they finally did something nice for me, I took my first voice lessons and found that I had a trainable voice and began the slippery slide to a completely unimaginable life and career as an international opera singer. Who would have thought? Not me. And as a result of that $50 of seed money, maybe they saw potential, maybe they didn't, I don't know, it doesn't matter. Because of that $50, I have found a wonderful life, had an incredible opportunity to travel over and continue to do so. I met a wonderful wife who I adore, have an incredible daughter, all of this because of an unexpected direction, because of Modesto Youth Theater, because of Paul, because of Dennis, and thank you.
In 1997, Craig Howard returns to MPA in a role that seemed written just for him, Will Rogers, in the Will Rogers Follies. The story showcases his humor as well as his love for his adoring wife, impeccably played by Karen Lotko, as he performs throughout the country and on Broadway. And the last show for the third decade, Bye Bye Birdie. Again, not about me. This is the last show I was cast in, but unfortunately I got a job in Sacramento and had to move that summer, and I hear Kurt Denham did an adequate job replacing me. Also cast in that version of the show was Morgan James as the teenager Kim McAfee. Miss James has gone on to perform professionally throughout the country, including on Broadway. I happen to have a signed copy of her recent release CD that I will sell to the highest bidder at intermission.
Morgan James would like to have been with us today, but she is on a solo national singing tour, which will perform at Modesto State Theater on June 8th. Tonight, she's performing in Madison, Wisconsin, last night in Milwaukee, promoting her fantastic new album, Reckless Abandon.
Hi, everybody. It's Morgan James. I so wish that I could be with you guys tonight. I'm currently on tour, and I can't be there to celebrate, but I'm with you in spirit, and I just wanted to say how important MPA was to me and to my development in becoming the singer and the actress that I am. And I don't know where I would have ended up if I didn't have that special community of people and that special place to teach me so much about theater and being a team player and growing up. And it really, really set me up for my life in the arts and in theater. And every kid should have that opportunity. Every person should. Thank you to MPA and to Paul for giving me opportunities and a place to call home. So happy anniversary, and thank you for everything. I hope you guys have a wonderful night.
Ladies and gentlemen, with cast members from all previous productions of A Chorus Line, please welcome back the MPA dancers and the ensemble chorus to close the first half with one singular sensation.